Good morning. It's Thursday, it's 9 a.m, so it can only be coffee kickstarters, and we're the Property Angels. And you can see with us this morning, we've got a very special guest, but more on that first. So Property Angels was founded by a former solicitor, former accountant, and former police detective who saw the need to professionalise the industry. And using their knowledge, their experience and proven track record, they endeavour to guide and support those new to the industry, giving them solid practical experience and a safe environment to enable them to thrive and push forward in a healthy manner. Now, the Property Angels Coffee Kickstarter series aims to inspire those both new and already on their journey by sharing real-life roadmaps from coalface practitioners. And from today and for the 2 episodes following this, we're doing a business special series with the fabulous Fiona Talbot. First, however, Sam and I would like to introduce the Property Angels. So I'm Karen Stanbridge, and I originally started out as an accountant. Well, somebody has to, right? I then went on to work in project and program management, and I moved into strategic business consultancy. I'm 1/3 of PIP Southampton and a third of Property Angels, along with Sam Beddoe and Sarah Smith. Now, I escaped corporate land in May 2015, but business consultancy, business change, process optimization, get fit plans, well, they were my bread and butter for some 25 years, and solid experience accrued from time spent working within these large corporates, consistently delivering focus, direction, a multi-million-dollar benefit. Those skills were skills I transferred when I left, and now I help those new to the industry define their vision, craft a how-to blueprint to take them down their pathway to success. I also work with high net worth individuals wanting to build a sustainable property business in and around the Reading area. I can be engaged on interim management, board and advisory roles. So that's me. So Sam, would you like to introduce yourself and Sarah before we focus on the main act of the day?
Thanks, Karen. So Sarah can't be with us today. She's on maternity leave. She had her daughter at the beginning of October, so she's got her hands full, and we're going to see her popping in and out of the Property Angels interviews as and when she can, but obviously I'm sure you can understand maternity leave has to take precedence at the moment. She's got her hands full. So Sarah is... She's been a property investor for a couple of decades now. Her previous career was as a solicitor, and she became an accidental landlord. I think it was probably about 2004, so quite a while ago. She wanted to move property, and her broker said, well, there's a way that you can move property but keep hold of the property that you've already got. So she did that for a few years as a way of accumulating property, and then sort of geared it up a bit after that. So she's got a diverse range of property. They are either HMOs or single lets. What she's worked on the past few years is to make that property business as passive as it can be, so as hands-off as it possibly can be, because she's prioritising her family now, which is the whole goal of why she did that with property. But she has experience in single buy-to-lets. She's done auctions, title splits, refurbs. So she's got a wealth of experience. She's also run a letting agency that was really, really successful in Southampton. And as Karen says, part of Partners in Property Southampton, like Karen and I, we're all co-hosts together with that too. So Sarah's got great experience. She's also did the Southampton Property Show as well. So yeah, so she's going to be popping in and out when she can. We look forward to having her back on the show. And then a little bit about me. So my previous career was as a police detective for 23 years. So quite a different world to the world I'm working in now. I have a couple of property businesses. I've been full-time in property probably about 5 or 6 years now. And I've got experience in buy-to-lets, HMOs, rent-to-rent, HMOs and service accommodation, buying at auction, selling at auction, commercial conversion, service accommodation, title splits, working with private investors, working with SaaS money. So I've got a service accommodation business at the moment, and also a development company where I'm buying a couple of mixed use buildings that will be developed into residential use. So that's a little bit about me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. No, that's fabulous. And Sarah's actually just listening in the background, and she shouted out good morning to everyone.
Yeah, I was just sharing it if you saw me looking away. And good morning, everybody. Great to be invited back on the Kickstarter with my lovely property friends. If you're listening, comment below so we can see who's tuned in this morning. And I want to say special shout out to my friend Lynn, who I see is watching from Glasgow. So another very successful property women in business, actually, who I think she's just wanting to get into property, but successful in her own right in business as well. So morning, Lynn, nice to see that you're watching as well.
That is fabulous. So Fiona, we are so delighted you've come back for this series. Yeah. So let's talk a bit first about who you are and how you're where you are, just so people get a perspective where it all started and how you've got to where you are today. So do you want to tell us a bit about how it all began?
Yeah, so apologies if you've heard the story before, or who's somebody that's followed me in the past. But so my parents were landlords back in Australia. They were landlords, but they spent their sort of entire 30-year investing career buying 5 flats. So they did what I call leapfrogging. They bought a property, cashed it out, bought the second property, the 2 cashed the second out, and so on and so forth. And over 30 years, they managed to retire in their 50s, financially free, retire early on the back of these 5 properties. So I didn't do that. That's not my method. I've been going for 23 years now. I'm a director of a PropCo property company, and I'm an asset builder. So my goal now is we look to buy about £2 million worth of asset each year, trying to shift that up to 3 million. And I suppose what's different about my company is we're self-funding. So I buy assets that create a yield. I manage that process as well as I can. And then I reinvest that yield in more assets that create a yield, and so on and so forth. And I very much subscribe, it's taken me 2 decades in business, to simplification. Simplify to multiply is a phrase I use a lot. And I don't want to overcomplicate it. I don't want joint venture partners, and I don't have, I'm a sole shareholder and founder. And I'm really focused on the back office. That's key. Implementation is everything. It's where you mine the gold. So I'm quite boring. I will sit down and think about my reserving policy and whether it's adequate, especially after these times and stuff like that. So I just going quickly back, grew up in Australia. I went to Melbourne University, so I did a degree at Melbourne University, which is kind of like the Cambridge of Australia. And instead of getting a lovely corporate job, I went the path less travelled. Went overseas, went to Japan, worked in Japan for a couple of years, met my now husband. We came over to the UK. He was in the Air Force. And I just, I had that kind of entrepreneurial itch, I guess. And then I just, grew my business over 23 years. It's certainly been an interesting ride. Primary strategy now is, it's commercial. But so buying, we might talk about my current deal at the moment. So I'm buying a commercial property at the moment in the city centre, but I also still buy residential, bread and butter. And I'm very clear about my blueprint. I don't buy up north. I buy where I can manage it, because I need that investment yield to produce the yield that I need to service the growth of the other of the future purchases. So. Always when I talk to property investors, I say, what's your growth strategy, or what's financing your growth? And in my case, it's the yield of the existing asset base. So
no, that's brilliant.
That's it, really. I've been in property 20 years. I've known you ladies for quite a few years now as well. And I really, there's no means to an end with what I do. I'm not after going off to a beach. Make no mistake. I like that, holidaying. But I'm definitely on track, hopefully 50 million within the next 6 years asset base. That's the type of business that I'm building. So You know, I do take a break, don't make no mistake. I'm not a workaholic, but I'm not property isn't a means to an end. It's my day job. It's my company. It's what gets me up in the morning. And yeah.
No, that's fabulous. And just to let everyone know that tunes in each week, we're going to run it slightly differently today. So Sam and I will be interacting with each other. So Sam and I will be asking alternate questions rather than one property angel leading the whole interview. So it's going to be much more kind of like smooth, if you like, this time. So yeah, it's a slightly different structure, and it's really focusing on leveraging Fiona's knowledge, of which she's got tons of, and, you know, giving you the opportunity to ask her questions, and giving both Sam and I the opportunity to drill down and question Fiona ourselves.
And I'm drinking coffee because it's coffee Kickstarter, right? That's the rule. Too early for Prosecco.
That's brilliant. So on that note, Sam, next question is over to you.
So Fiona, we've had, I think it's fair to say, we've had a bit of a challenging year in the property market, all of us.
Yeah.
Challenges in all of our different property businesses. And there's going to be some people here who are long and experienced in property, and some people who are new into property. So just give us a little bit of a talk through about how you had to appraise your business, pivot, deal with any challenges, and now that we're a little bit further down the line here, reflecting back on that, what difference do you think that's made to your business? I know there's a lot of questions.
Well, if you're just starting in 2020, well done, because what a year, hey, to get started. Yeah, we're going to remember 2020 for a long time to come. And it's creating a lot of new normals for us as well, isn't it? Whether that's working from home, whether it's exiting a business that's now not working, or starting a new business that's working in this, you know, this new normal. And, you know, the bottom hasn't really settled on what that looks like either. So we've still got a lot of things in flux, which we need to be very mindful of. So 2020, it's been a great year for my property business. In fact, it's we bought in 9 months, we bought £2.4 million worth of assets, which did include my new home. But yeah, you know, so quite a lot of asset for us as a business, and in 9 months. So we'll see how we do finishing out the last quarter of the year. And yeah, you know, I say this, that in March it was peacetime business, and then as soon as this Corona tide hit, wartime business started. So you know, you had to recognize that and act quickly. And I just realized over the course of the last 7 months, you know, barely had 2 days off, didn't get to go away in the summer, you know, working through a lot of different things. That challenge wakes me up. You know, it just wakes me up, and I get in there and scrap. You know, I do. You know, I get in with there. So you know, because you're just going to have to get on with it. You know, I think with the coronavirus, we're all in the same storm, but we weren't all in the same boat. I love that explanation of it. So it all took a snapshot in March of where we were, where our reserves were, how our cash flow was, you know, whether our business was sustainable, because I'm in a property entrepreneur program, and a gentleman there dropped to 10% of his trade because his business model wasn't working through this, but he had to pivot if he was to kind of act quickly. So for me, January and February, I did 2 rather large deals, quite large deals. I bought a pub in Newmarket in February. So I've got a certain reserve level that I'm comfortable with, and I'd kind of gone a little bit under that with the expectation that it would recapitalize quite fast, because I had a loan going through with NatWest Business, and coronavirus arrived. The loan was still honoured, even though it was on a pub that had closed during coronavirus. So that's relationship management for you. And so I spent the first part of April recapitalizing the business. That was important to me, making sure that I had the correct buffers. And a lot of the rules that I operate under held strong. So I have several cash assets. And I remember having conversations with people, you know, early days in my property career, it's all about leverage, leverage, leverage. Then you kind of get to this more mature stage where it's making sure you can, you know, that you're safe and that you can keep things, also whilst growing, of course. And so I brought in some practices and some of those were around keeping adequate reserve levels. And we were lucky we didn't have to take a mortgage holiday. And we had enough reserves, and I recapitalized from those cash assets. So going back to my point on that, there were people that used to say to me, "Oh, it's not liquid. When you need the money, you won't be able to access it." And boy, I pulled that fire emergency lever, and I had the money 4 or 5 days, quickly, so I could go out into the market, offer an asset-backed security first charge, and work with efficient solicitors and get that money quickly. So, and I didn't even have to access all of them. I only did one, and so that worked as well. So, it's really very important for the people that are starting out. Yes, I understand me saying, keep money away for the rainy day. The rainy day that Granny always warned us about. Well, that rainy day came. It arrived. Boy, it was a typhoon day rather than a rainy day. So, having good reserving and being very proactive as well. So obviously one of my businesses is a sports bar, which was impacted immediately. And I had to deal with the 16 staff that work there, closing that, over furloughing the staff. Boy, April was certainly an interesting month. So then I had a deal going through, lost the mortgage. It was just a buy to let, because the lender just went, "No, we're not. If you haven't used your mortgage offer, they're out." So I completed on that for cash, and that was a nice deal. And then I had a lot of noise that I was dealing with, with 19 staff across the business, a lot of fear that I was trying to help manage, saying we'll be okay, we've got reserves, stick to our bread and butter. One of the other fears was our tenants going to pay rent, because obviously the government's brought in these protection from eviction. One of the lucky things that I'd done about 18 months ago was re-report rents to Experian. So I sent my office manager sent an email out to all our tenants, essentially saying, yes, if you're going to have any trouble, contact us. We report to Experian. So, and we will continue to report through this. So luckily we've had to date, we've had very few issues with arrears. I wouldn't say zero, but it's been manageable. I would think 1%. And and then I guess over the summer, I had a 2-bed come up in July, 12 applications for it. We didn't shut in lockdown the property side. We were still open for business, but working remotely, because that's another thing. Everybody had to go, or the team had to go to working remotely. And we just got on with what we had to do. And, the numbers are just thriving. You're sort of thriving in these times, or surviving. And, there's things that we'll leave behind, and there's things that we'll take forward. Constant reassessment. Also, another thing was being able to tap into a community is really important during these times. So I have an entrepreneurial group that I'm a part of, a program that I'm on. They were having weekly boosts and things like that. So if you're struggling and feeling a little bit disconnected, maybe look for a property community that you can join. Always helps to find out what other people are doing. And so definitely, am I still buying? Yes, I am. I'm making sure the deals are the right deals and are sharp. I think that the next 2 years, I feel like 23 years has led to now. And it's going to be some great, I'm very positive about the future of the property market over the next 2 years for me and my property company. So,
that's really great. And it's being in, excuse me, it's being in the position where you were able to do that, because you'd slowly and safely scaled over time. And you knew you had multiple exits on anything you've bought, and or you've bought sharp, so you can rinse your money out later, right?
Yeah. And Felicia's just asked, did I hear correctly, you've got unencumbered assets for rainy day? And yes, I do, because obviously you've got the 85, whatever it is, 80,000 limit. So so as a property investor, we manage both working capital and cash flow. So in my working capital management plan, when I have surplus funds, I put them into cash assets that I know I can access when I need to. And so I am told 10% of the balance sheet in cash funds. That's just my comfort number. Everybody's different.
No, that's really good. And Priya was saying as well, sustainability has been a real wake-up call for her. So she was resonating with what you were saying about. Yeah. So that's really great stuff. And I know I'm particularly familiar with your pub deal that you bought. That's got a ton of angles on, and Sam might jump in with some questions on that, because you've got the opportunity to build serviced accommodation units on that as an uplift.
Yeah, I do, and they closed. They've reopened. We did delay a small portion of rent, but they've been making all their payments on time. So we are looking to maybe add. It's 14 minutes from Newmarket Races, and we are looking at maybe helping out by providing some service accommodation. I just haven't quite had the time to really get that part started yet, because it's been interesting year of dealing with a lot of things. We moved office too in the middle of it as well, which was already on the cards, but doing that through COVID was was definitely an interesting experience.
I think the thing is what I'm hearing here, being agile and reacting immediatly, not panic. Reacting.
Yeah, don't wait and see, sit there. But that's always the way I've been, forward facing and future facing, and knowing where I want to get to, what I want to do, what does that framework look like. And that's taken me many years of looking, asking myself questions, going on training, working with business advisors and stuff like that, to be very clear on what kind of business it is that I'm building. So, and it's not one that's overcomplicated and causes me a lot of pain. It's one that, I actually enjoy when I'm doing deals and I'm closing them. That's my kind of crack, if you like, my property crack. I know that traders, the day that it sells and the money lands in the accounts, they're like buzz day. My buzz day is the day we complete, and I get the keys. So, and I buy generally for life. So I'm buying my assets for the long term. Yeah, so that's all good. We still don't know what the future's looking like. And I had made a strategic decision, and I will dig into this a bit later, but I'd made a strategic decision to exit HMO, started in the end of 2018. So we went from 130 rooms down. We hit the pandemic with 40 rooms. And I know we had some friction and some issues there. And I think, so glad I didn't have the 130 rooms. That would have been definitely an interest. Added another level of complexity, challenge, and problems to that experience. So,
I've got a couple of questions for you, actually. So MSAL thought you were Sarah, actually. But MSAL's just said, would you have to notify the tenants before you actually report to Experian? So basically, she said, can you share how you do it?
It's in the AST. There's a clause in the AST. So when we migrated to doing it, we had to write to them, and that was provided by so I use Arthur. So they worked with us, and Credit Builders, the service that reports to Experian. So they provided the clause, and but now our AST, any new ASTs generated since we brought that in, which was 2018, had the clause in there. So they do know. And remember, it's an opportunity for them to build credit as well for their on-time payment. And, my attitude was in 2018 was my water bill's on Experian, why is your rent not on there? So, yeah.
And there's a couple more questions as well around what you've spoken about so far. So Felicia, she said, leverage is what most people say to do. When do you stop leveraging at a high level, or what's the target level?
So I long gone from the 85% days. I tend to go in at 75% for residential, probably commercials, tricky, 60, 65 maybe. And then once I've kind of sorted the deal out, so I might buy for cash and then refinance at month 6 or straight away, depending on what the deal is and what I can do. And then I set it up and I leave it. So I'm not, constantly kicking the can or whatever. So I try and I go in at 75 and then I just let the market growth drop that leverage. And so leverage is what most people say do. It has its place, especially in an early stage, because obviously you've got to make the capital that you have, you've got to sweat it. And I have some properties I haven't leveraged for years, but the equity is building up. So that's part of, remember I said you manage cash flow and you manage capital. That's my part of my policy on managing capital. So my protocols.
Brilliant. And Priya's got a question. Priya said, and it probably actually leads on to something Sam and I were going to be questioning you on, which is your view on the property market. But Priya's asked, so bear in mind when you answer, where do you see the commercial property market going? And what type of commercial assets would you say are the ones to consider now?
It's so tricky because it depends on markets all around the country are different. Where I am, the last 2 bed I had 12 applications on, so the rental market is really strong, and you're getting increased rent and rent bids. Whereas other parts of the country, like London, it's people having to reduce their rents. I did rent a serviced office, a 900 square foot serviced office in. I had a tenant. They were in the airline industry and in airline service industry, part of the ecosystem. They withdrew. They were supposed to move in May. I relet it 5 years, but I had to give them 25% off in year 1. Being flexible. And, I'm seeing a lot of empty. Somebody asked to have a call with me the other day because they're considering a shop in the city that I'm in. Did a bit of a chat about what to look for and so on. And there was 4 or 5 shops coming empty. I'm buying a commercial building at the moment that's got 2 shops, 2 flats, or 2 maisonettes, actually. They've got gardens. So, but those flats those shops aren't very big. And when you can offer flexible terms, people can get in, give the business a try and see if it's going to work. I mean, they've got 7-year leases. I think the commercial property market is, it's all about making sure you get the right tenants in, at the outset, and making sure you structure the lease in a good way, and then, recognising it might take a bit longer to fill. But what kind of commercial am I looking at buying? You could say, well, don't buy hospitality, but then you might get, a nice bricks and mortar plots for less than construction value. That's one of my favourites, which I've talked about, where I buy a building for less than it would cost to put the building on the lands. I love that. That's just like one of my favourites. And, there's probably going to be opportunity for that as well. Where there's pain, there's profit, So, one of the things I've recognised in over these last few months is, I wonder if I should go to my whiteboard. So let me pull, I like a whiteboard. Let me pull my whiteboard over. This is high tech, no screen share here. It's whiteboard. Let me see if it fits in here. Oh, there we go. All right, you see it? So A, B, C. You see the C? Yeah. Yep. So I look at my strategic buying as A, B, and C. So for me, C was HMOs or serviced accommodation. Yes, there's cash flow, but there's aggravation and there's a lot of work, and I've got to really have a strong operational, backup to make that work. My Bs are my commercial serviced, which I have a little bit of, as you know. My commercial service and my single lets. They're just bread and butter. They do what they're supposed to do. They pay me rent. It's not the greatest of cash flow, but there's a lot less aggravation. For me now, my A's are my commercials. Equity and time to set up, but you know, if I can get the right tenant in over the longer period, they will, you know, they'll do me well. So what am I doing with my A's? That's where I sit. My job is looking for my A's and making those, you know, finding those deals, making them work, making them perform how they're supposed to perform. My B's, I want turnkey, just easy, you know, I want them to be turnkey. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be me finding them. I can train someone to do that. And I want to get out of my C's. And what I see property investors doing a lot of the time is they live in their C's, you know, and I did too. I did as well. So, you know, I didn't even recognize this because my A's, I want to build my company around my A's and my B's and, you know, let my C's go. So this is the framework of my thinking and my decision-making around strategically what I'm doing as a business. Does that make sense?
It does. And Priya's asked you a question on that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Priya's saying, what would you do with a small office block in a great location?
Well, I mean, service. Can you do them as serviced offices?
She probably could. It's just a regular office block right now.
It's just a what, sorry?
A regular small office block in a fabulous location.
Well, fabulous location sounds good. You know, you can do an office with an office, you can convert to residential. I took an office block, split it into 7 offices and rented them out, kind of HMO style. And a lot of people were attracted to the flexibility of that scenario where it's 3 months notice, they interact with each other. It's funny because they're like, you know, you sort of say you wouldn't go out for coffee with your tenants and all the rest of it, but your commercial tenants, you'll stop and have a significant conversation with them and think, oh, I'd really like to chat more with you about your business, what you're up to. So, and in fact, my block, they all go out for Christmas, Christmas dinner. Not sure about this year.
Priya's saying, yes, that's what it is, but it's not well managed. So I guess what needs to be fixed is the management of.
Yeah. Where's the, I've got this thing I've been saying, I came up with it the other day, and I call them pinches and punches. So in property, I have these things that like pinch at me and they're like irritating. So an example is I've got a building in Littleport, and I have permission to demolish an outbuilding, but I haven't done it. And really, there's a lot of there's tenants keeping cars in the back and everything, and I could actually put a row of storage bin, you know, things on the back of it, and every time, and you know, and make no mistake, that would be revenue generating and fairly passive too. So I call them pinches, like kind of nicking at me. And then there's like sometimes those pinches become punches, where it's like, oh crap, 4 of my service tenants have moved out. That's like $2,000 in rent. I've got to pay attention now and have a proper reletting system in place. So, you know, it just depends whether, you know, I try and pay attention to the pinches a bit more, because I don't like to let them get to punches. So
how did you arrive at the ABC thing then, Fiona? How long?
So on my property training that I do, the entrepreneurial, they do it for your customer base. So you were meant to identify, they ask us, your customer base. So property businesses work differently to thinking like these traditional businesses, these trading businesses. So I converted it to, you know, my business, identifying the levels. You could call it gold, bronze, silver, bronze, or whatever. So yeah, and it shows the importance of training, because training gets you thinking. Thinking gets you looking at what you're doing. And I'm really big on compartmentalizing or framing things out, or mind mapping, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah.
And you said about the HMOs that you're not doing now. Now, a lot of people will have been encouraged, especially if they're coming new into property, to take on HMOs, because they can be quite good cash flowing.
Yeah. But that cash flow is from doing the management work yourself. So, which comes at a price, your time, energies, mental, I may argue. And, you know, it's easy for me to sit here 22 years on with a bank of capital and a business that's producing a strong cash flow that I can reinvest, and say, don't do these C's or these strategies, because But the reality is I've done HMOs, I've done serviced accommodation, and but I've just, you know, made sure that I've shifted through the gears over time. I possibly hung on a little bit longer to got a few of the punches. You know, and now I'm obviously, I've got the blueprint that works for me, and I've got, went down the rabbit holes on some of those strategies. Because yeah, if you're leaving your job and you need revenue, cash flow, cost of living. So, you know, there's almost like stages in the property journey. First is cost of living. Once that's covered, then you get to the stage where it's all about growth and, you know, growing your business, but it's all about where you want to be. Some people might be happy. My husband and I kind of sometimes laugh about if we'd have just bought 20 and cashed them all out and they were making £1,000 a month in rent, you know, we wouldn't have to, but we're not like that. Sometimes we have a chuckle and think, oh, we could time warp back to, you know, 20 years ago. Would we want to follow that path? I mean, no, I probably wouldn't, but it's always worth. And I really, like Karen, I really respect people that go into things saying, this is where I want to get to. I want this many properties and that's enough for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, everyone's different on that, actually. We're getting lots of positive feedback about your A's, B's and C's. Kim is feeling that pain too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to share it because it's taken me, you know, I like to share things because sometimes it's taken me a long time to recognize or get to that place. So,
no, that's really cool. And Sam and I will probably jump in with questions on this, but we're going to talk today as well about your views on where you think the property market's going, right? Where we are now and what you as a property company can be looking at, signs to look out for, things that might come up, maybe assisted sale where people are feeling the pressure, that kind of thing. So yeah, do you want to start sharing with us where you think the property market is going, signs to look out for, and Sam and I will jump in with questions as you head down that discussion.
So just off the cuff, we're seeing some challenges is coming with the protection of eviction. So you need to be very, very careful who you're putting in properties. In fact, I'm almost at the point where I want everybody to have a home owning guarantor. I'm getting a bit touchy. But I just feel that I've probably been waiting a long time for the property market to get to where it's we all know it's going. I buy assets based on yield, in particular a net yield. And if the prices go down and the yield goes up, hey, I'm happy. Those are happy days for me. So because, you know, I'm sweating my assets and I'm getting more cash flow, which is important to my growth model. And I can see that that coming. Might be that it's not until after April. We'll see what happens with stamp duty. So that's something. I do think the protection of tenants is here for a while, if not long term. It did irritate me a little bit that a landlord has to give 6 months notice, but the tenants still only have to give 1 month. I would have liked to have seen them at least half what they were doing to the tenants. So tenants give 3 months notice. I think, you know, helping, it's almost an abusive relationship thing. A residential landlord these days is like, how much more can we take? But because I come from a PropCo standpoint and obviously a portfolio of income, if I've got one or two causing me a bit of grief, that's fine because the portfolio can carry that. So it just depends where you are in that stage to what kind of levels of pain. It is definitely time for caution though, you know, and you know, would I not buy something now because it might be cheaper next year? Maybe. I try and buy well anyway. You know, I use that phrase sharp pricing. And anyway, I'll have lost that revenue that I could be generating. So I take all of those things into consideration. I think it's, in some ways, the property market will also be linked to what the government do, because there's a lot of money washed into the market over this, 6-7 months. You've got pensioners, savings, getting them, no money at all. So they now might think, right, I'll buy a buy-to-let for cash or something like that. We think, they'll be put off because of compliance, but they may not even be aware of all of the compliance required, or they'll use an agent because they think that's sufficient. I don't, certainly prices aren't going to go up. They're only going to either stay stable or drop. But I'm always a bit hesitant about predicting where the market's going to go because there's so many things that influence it. I just focus on my area, my small market, and I'm already seeing, because I get all the alerts, the prices being reduced slightly. And certainly if I was a seller at the moment, I wouldn't be going in. You know how you get a lot of the time where the sellers have a high expectation on their property, and they obviously want to achieve the best price. You need to be going in pricing it to sell, really. And
some more questions
buyer's market.
Fiona, at this point. So can we just pause, and we've got some questions come in. So firstly, Vero wants to talk about your share of assets and how it's kind of like apportioned. So what does your asset base look like? How much is in property? How much have you got in other things? How are you diversified, really, is what Vero's interested in.
I do buy shares a little bit. I bought Disney when the parks were closed because I know how substantial and significant, so those went under 100. I should buy more shares. Where I do have a small share portfolio. And actually, I'm looking at probably beefing that up a little bit as well over time. So Fiona's property asset.
What do you think you want to be, though? Just rough percentages. 5%, 10%.
I probably have about 2%. But again, with shares, I'm a tortoise investor. I have some Google shares and that I bought a while ago, and then I'm not going to retire on it, but it's in the pot. In fact, when I do asset and liability statements, I forget to include shares. I just forget about it because I'm so property focused. So it's always a bit nice when I add those in as well.
But
I've done that in the past.
On that topic as well, to share with Vero, you've got asset class diversification and you've got tenant demographic diversification, haven't you?
Yeah, and also another share that I'm quite keen on is TomTom. So I'm giving it. So this is no financial advice being given here, because they came off the business to consumer market and they're B2B, and they provide the navigation in Teslas. So I had a dinner. I was at an entrepreneurial dinner and I was talking to one of the founders, and it was such a fascinating story. I love entrepreneurial stories, and they're over a $1 billion cap company now. So my husband's into coins, so we have coins not at the house, Krugernautes and stuff like that. So we've got a little bit of diversification in that way as well.
Okay, and Angela's asking, companies that rent off you in commercial premises, if they go bust, they can just leave your property, right? What would you do to mitigate that? How can you help? What are your thoughts on that?
Personal guarantee. So I've got a commercial building up for let at the moment, and I had 3 offers last week, and I went back to the agent, and don't get me started on doing the agent's job for them. And they said, so-and-so's made an offer to rent, so they've agreed the rent that you want. And I wrote back and said, what will the entity be that takes on the lease? Are they willing to give a P? I did put PG, silly me, because they came back and said, what's a PG? Which is a bit worried. And I was in a bit of a hurry, and did have experience in this industry. They recognise that it'll be a quarter's rent bond, yada yada yada. So so I'm still waiting to hear back on that one. And so personal guarantee, I'm looking to change. So I'm reporting the rents to I do it for residential, and is one of these pinchers that have become punchers. I had a few slightly slow pay commercial tenants, but not within a week and the first chase they paid. But I've actually thought I really do need to get sorted on making sure I'm reporting my commercial rents as well. or writing the lease in such a way that I can put it on their personal credit file. So that's a project my financial controller's working on at the moment. And I mean, the thing is with commercial, every lease is different and every tenancy is different. And I don't have high leverage on my commercial. In fact, many of them are unencumbered. So if they go bust, that's unfortunate for that business. And you know, but equally, I'm a business landlord, so I'd have to act in accordance with the lease and, you know, see what, you know, what I can get back or whatever. But no, that hasn't happened at the moment, so touch wood. I've had a couple in my serviced office give notice to move back home because they've had a downturn in trade. But I've been renting things out this entire time. So just get onto marketing it properly. Be reasonable on my rents up front, not greedy. You know, I might be pricing them slightly lower than 2019, but still something I can live with.
Okay, there's more questions coming in as well.
Okay.
So
I'm just going to grab a coffee. I'm being.
Alicia's asking, can you expand on the A's? Right, she'd like more depth on that, and maybe it's something we pick up next time on week 2 and do a deeper dive on. And Priya's asked, when you buy a commercial building at what percentage discount would you look to buy it at typically?
Oh, this old chestnut. BMV. Karen, you can almost answer that question for me. You want to answer it? You know how I work. I don't always buy it at a discount.
It's what you can do to it.
Yeah, there's so many people that get hung up on what discount they can get, and they overlook that golden goose that's just sitting there with it, where you pay them what they want, you get the deal done, and there's a side play or some other opportunity that they've missed that you can exercise. So is this a good time to get into the deal I'm doing at the moment? Does that segue into the one I'm doing? Because that's exactly the classic scenario. I'm buying a commercial building at the moment, and I was saying that it's on for 625 and I'm getting it for 600. Is that considered? I don't see that as much of a discount.
Sam can chip in and give you questions on that, because I know she's familiar with that as well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I did offer 575, but it got turned down. And when you stack the deck, 2 shops, 2 flats, it's about that. That's about what its asset value matches. Though the amusing thing is the 2 flats, which are accessed through the rear car park, had their own separate gardens. So they've kind of called them flats and priced them accordingly, but I consider them to be masonettes. They're not on 2 floors, but they've got a separate door, a parking spot and a garden. So and then the car park is a development site and it's not priced in. So there is a good couple of hundred with planning on the and there's 2 points of access to the car park as well, 4 flats there with planning. I think with planning it's worth probably 200,000. And if I did I was trying to run some rough numbers on it, but if I built it out, which is probably what I would do, probably 500,000, 400,000, 500,000. Oh, I mean, I'm boring. I'll build them out, refinance, keep them. I'll never see the big equity play. But
so the worst case scenario there is that you're buying something that has a future value of about 800. Then, even if it's just a planning uplift. So
well, there's a site that's in the city centre it's an office to resi conversion. There's 24 flats, and I'm familiar with the agent, so we've had a conversation, and the 1-beds are starting at 230. So if I can get 4 1-beds in, I'm not at that stage yet, but it's but I've seen this before, and I've negotiated on deals before where someone's gone in and been asking for the chipping, trying to get that B&V price, and of course do it if you can. And then I've gone in a lot, above and not necessarily B&V, secured it, and then I've had an amazing asset or an amazing return. So I wouldn't just get too hung up on the B&V. Every deal is different. But then saying that, I like my, I've bought buildings before that are less than construction value. So, they're so cheap you might be £80 a square foot. You know, you couldn't build them for that. So you see those opportunities as well.
I was looking at a property like that the other day, actually, which was it was a hotel in a very nice part of Hampshire, and it was up for £1 million, but the space and the land around it seemed more than what they were selling it for. Not with what's been going on with the COVID stuff this year, it's probably, because it's a staycation area, it's probably not done so well this year with its bookings, and maybe that's tipped them over to the edge, like throw the towel in, we've had enough. But, looking at the building as a whole, what else can you do with it? It sounds like that's where your edge is your creativity, is not just looking at what we've got here, but what can we do with it?
You need to see the deal in 3D. That's what I always say. And we're lucky that we're in a position as a company we can often buy for cash now, and then we can work the magic sauce, and then potentially, obviously, I can't buy a £20 million London hotel. You know what I mean, though. But we've got a certain base that we will work at, and you know, the downside is when my capital is deployed, keeping the reserves that I require in place, I'm stuck and I can't look. I have had a few people approach me saying about, you know, providing capital to me, and I've tried to think of a way I can make that work that works for me as well, because finding deals isn't a problem for me after, you know, all this time, and there's plenty of them out there, that's for sure. And I'd also never do a deal that would sink the ship, so to speak. I never go all in. So like in poker, I never go all in on a deal as well. So
what brings you to you said you have a criteria of what you buy now. How did you get to that criteria? Because some people are scattergun, they'll look at everything, a deal's a deal. Sounds like you've nailed that down a bit more. What's brought you to that?
Time. I've got only so much time to be looking at things. I mean, I can tell a deal very quickly that something's a deal for me very quickly. In fact, I was in town the other day, and I was yesterday, and I was looking in an estate agent shop window, and I'm like, right, there's 10 properties in that window. It's obviously a town I know well, and one of them was a potential deal. And I'm trying to train my children now, so I pull them over and say, which one's the deal? Which one of these is the deal? And because we were going to view a flat that I'd bought that was being renovated. If you follow me on Instagram, I took a photo and put it up. And we play a bit of a game, or we play a game in the car where we see a for sale board and I say, right, what do you think this house is up for? Then we go home and check it on Rightmove, see who gets the closest. So I saw somebody asked about rent to rent. You know, it's just not my bag. I tried to once rent to rent a property next to one I already had, and the landlord annoyed me, so I just bought it. So I just thought I would nitpicking over small things, and I just thought, I don't play well with others, clearly. And I wouldn't sublet myself. I do get approached to, but you know, I'm not retired yet, so and I'll probably get my boys hoofing around in the business before I'd probably give it to a rent to rent. I think the contracts are untested in court. I know people that have had problems with rent to rent agreements where they didn't get a deposit, either. Like, you know, it's a commercial agreement, so ask for you know, or they might not have been set up that well. They're saying that I've got a friend that has done quite well on it as well. He on being the renter. I don't know how are everybody finding them in these times. I know a good friend of mine that rented I think 6 properties, and in April the renter was asking for discounts and things, and I thought, isn't this meant to be guaranteed rent? That's the whole point. It's not the landlord's problem if you know, you haven't put money aside for the rainy day. You know, that's true. I think we got sloppy. I think we got sloppy in the things that, you know, we were told to keep 3 months reserves or 6 months reserves. I have kept reserves, and in fact, I think my conservatism has been warranted finally after a long time. But I had a problem in 2012. I was, you know, typical property investor, like have money, buy house. And my accountant miscalculated my tax. So I had a big bill come in, and I felt that pain of being short. And it turned out he miscalculated, and I didn't even owe this tax. Needless to say, it's my ex-accountant. And so back then in 2012, you know, the pinches and punches. And so I always started to keep a balance after that. And as I've gotten more, focused more on the business elements, I've stuck to my guns. So
we're almost at the top of the hour, guys. Now, Sam, you might want to say a few words on the rent to rent question. It was from Biro, and it was specifically rent to rent SA, which I know you've got a load of knowledge in, and the pains that come with that, but the upside you can get. But then we are going to have to wrap up once Sam's given that update for today. However, don't forget, we're doing business special with Fiona over 3 weeks. So this is one of 3, and we're back with loads more content. We've got so much feedback, loads more questions, and lots of positive comments about all that's been shared so far. So Sam, do you want to share your thoughts on rent to rent SA with Biro?
What was her question?
So basically, she asked Fiona what her thoughts of rent to rent SA as a cash flow generator.
I think it can be a cash flow generator, especially if you're, I mean, we've been talking about you 2 decades plus in business, Fiona. Somebody starting out, it can be a way of getting yourself going, getting experience in the property industry so that you can start building your reserves to start.
And covering cost of living, because so many people go into property wanting to get out of the day job, whatever they're doing. They need the money to pay the bills, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I've got rent to rent service accommodation. I've got 8 of them. So what I would say is it's a good way of learning, getting to grips with it all, managing the business. It is a business. It's not property investing. It's definitely a business.
It's hospitality, really. And then that's where you come. Yeah. So, you know, I've done, I used to call them holiday lets back in the day. Not so, though, and mine were always, and I still have one. I've got one in Florida. I've got a townhouse in Florida.
I think it's like any business. You need to do your research before you launch into anything, and testing areas, because we've had so much volatility. And especially, I was talking to one of my guests, actually. I popped into one of my properties yesterday, talking to one of the guests, and he's got a couple of holiday lets. He's a lawyer, but he's got a couple of holiday lets in Wales, which have had to be closed down for months and months and months. So, you know, you could be in that position with your service accommodation business, your holiday let business, and you're basically stuffed for months on end because you're not allowed to run your business, and that could be crippling. It could close people down.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd make a point, I just quickly like to make a point on, business isn't a straight line. It's the unforeseen that can really cause you issues. So you've always got to be vigilant on making sure your business is strong, mentally strong too, because, you know, your business needs that. And it's not a straight line. Don't expect it to be fair. What's been happening this year to landlords has been rather unfair, if you ask me. You know, 6 months notice, people can, I mean, we had a HMO where somebody knifed someone's door because they were going out with their ex-girlfriend in COVID, and we couldn't evict them. Long story. They're out now. But, you know, so, you know, the antisocials are protected. The people in arrears are protected. Can you imagine somebody not paying you your salary? And, you know, you have to work for 6 months, but you don't get your salary. That's the level of unfairness that I see it as. So
yeah, no, totally agree. We are getting so much feedback coming in, but we are past the top of the hour. Now, guys, just to remind you all, this is part 1 of 3 that we are so delighted Fiona is going to be joining Sam and I with, and Sarah will be dipping in and out as and when she can. But unfortunately, we've reached that, you know, end of our time. So don't forget, be back with us next week. Have your questions ready if you've got further questions. And next week, we've got lots of great additional stuff coming in, operational hacks, things that have kept Fiona safe. Now, Felicia was asking about reserves. We're covering that in more depth next week, and rules that Fiona applies within her business. So
yeah, is it possible? Would you be open to people sending you some questions?
Totally.
ahead of time because I see there's 48 comments, 55 now, and I can't really see it when I see it. So you know me, I like to help. So I like to problem solve. So I have a 4-account system I use, which I'm happy to share with you next week. It's my reserving protocol. And so maybe we can touch on that, and that'll answer Felicia's questions. And I look forward to it next Thursday.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's such a generous offer as well. Thank you for that. And guys, do write those questions. There's not often that you're going to get a chance to have these one-on-ones directly with Fiona. So put your questions together, submit them to Property Angels as a message. Sam and I will pick it up and we'll go through the questions with Fiona in advance so that we're ready to tackle them all.
Yeah, we can maybe just do it like bullet style, you know, bang, 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 bang for the first 10 minutes next week.
Brilliant. Have a great rest of the day, everyone, and we'll see you back next week. Thank you. Bye.